welcome back to Otaku No Video. As always, thank you very much for joining me for my review of Zeta Gundam, the second Gundam series. Now, this is a spoiler-free review. Even if you haven't seen the original Gundam, this isn't going to reveal anything about characters that show up, things like that. There will be another video follow-up coming up that will sort of go into some of those more details for those of you who have seen and kind of want to get into those elements. Anyway, so Zeta was made after original Mobile Suit Gundam was released and it tanked. But there was a movie trilogy that recombined footage from original Gundam was released and did rather well. And because that did well enough, they were able to make Zeta, which is set 8 years after the events of original Gundam. Now, Zeta kind of turns the antagonists on their head. The Earth Federation has now been taken over internally by a fascist internal group called the Titans. So the heroes are now a resistance movement called the AUG, A-E-U-G. I don't know, they just call it AUG throughout the entire show. And they're fighting the Titans. So Zeta's war is more of a guerrilla war fought primarily in space. It's a very different feel than Mobile Suit Gundam, and actually, frankly, a lot of mecha series, where it's a more chaotic war, and it's just not as directly structured as, say, original Gundam was. The animation is dramatically improved compared to the original Gundam, thanks to the release of Macross in the meantime. The original Macross TV series had shown that anime on TV could have high-budgeted animated action sequences, and that would still make money. So Zeta was able to get in the money to have some wonderful animated sequences. The animators, even in Zeta, would sometimes animate the vernier thrusters that fire to change a mobile suit's direction in space. Obviously, if you're moving in space and you need to change direction, you need to fire a little rocket somewhere. The idea is on mobile suits, they have little vernier thrusters all over the place. You can actually see those fire as mobile suits are turning around and shooting at things. It's amazing, and it's gorgeous. Now that said, it's still Sunrise animation being used here. This is not realistic Studio Ghibli style animation. It's still very much stylized. That said, the direction is somewhat dynamic, but always clear. It's very clear what's going on. It doesn't use really weird camera angles, but it uses camera angles that really get across the information that you need to understand what's going on. Moreover, the action animation moves along rapidly, but never too fast. It's almost always very clear what's going on and who's where and who's being shot up, things like that, in Zeta. So that definitely works. Also want to mention before I go any further, the music. Amazing. It is a full orchestral soundtrack, heavy on strings, dark, moody. I don't know a lot about the history of anime soundtracks, but this is the earliest one that I've come across so far that's considered sort of a legendary soundtrack for TV. There's certainly been great movie soundtracks, but in terms of anime on TV, this seems to be one of the first big ones, except maybe Macross for the for the pop songs. But in terms of the full orchestral soundtrack, this is definitely a stunner. Amazing stuff. So the characters in this, I can't talk too much about them because some of them are spoilers in terms of who lives and dies from original Gundam, or who comes back. But the protagonist here is Camille Bidan. And one reviewer suggests that Camille is autistic. And I actually think that's a very accurate assessment. I don't know that the creators intended for him to be autistic, but I think that's functionally what he is. As is shown in the first episode, he is very quick to anger. He doesn't really make friends. He's withdrawn. He has a very strong sense of justice and things, and he lashes out very quickly about such things. And very focused on certain things. And just in general, intense and kind of closed off from the rest of the world, which makes him a rather unusual protagonist for a mecha series. While he certainly has guts and passion, it's this weird, almost twisted version of that. I certainly have not seen a Gundam or any mecha protagonist like that before or since, in terms of being someone who's not someone you'd want to be like. I'll put it that way, which is quite interesting. Now, I also want to mention the writing of the female characters. Tomino has traditionally had trouble in his shows writing female characters. Granted, he isn't writing, the dialogue word for word, but a lot of his female characters tend to be men with breasts, or otherwise just very awkwardly structured in terms of being relatively simple. I'll put it that way. Zeta still retains a lot of that. A lot of female characters really don't feel like strong female characters. They're kind of there to be, just to be there. Or, like I said, kind of men with breasts, or just sort of basically genderless. So that is an FYI. Although there are some strong female characters, and this Zeta does have an interesting cast of characters in terms of their interactions with each other. This is not the family of original Mobile Suit Gundam, for example. It's a very different dynamic. Now, I also need to point out, without getting into any spoilers, Zeta's dark. It has a very dark ending, and that's as far as I'm going to go in terms of saying anything. But, yeah. So just be aware of that. Now, in terms of explaining the overall feel of Zeta and sort of how I, what I thought, here's the thing. When I watched Zeta, I enjoyed it, but it felt awkwardly structured. There were all these relationships between characters who didn't really feel close to each other. The relationships didn't seem to be changing. The plot certainly was more chaotic than I was used to in Mobile Suit Gundam or in a lot of other mecha series. There's just a lot of stuff going on, and things kind of thrown at you. And then I got to the ending, and I didn't really like the ending, and I didn't know what to think about Zeta. And then I started to think about it. I started to process it and go over things and seeing how the relationships really had been changing, but they hadn't been changing in an obvious way. Or characters had elements of themselves revealed over the course of the story. And it was just very weirdly made. So the more I thought about it, the more I started to appreciate how it was put together. And the more I liked how the characters were put opposite each other, and which characters were there, and what they had to say to each other, and why that character was there, why that character had done that. And then I had a friend of mine watch Zeta, and so I was able to talk it over with him, and he had a very similar reaction. Kind of, as it went on, then he started to appreciate it. Zeta ages like a fine wine in a way that I have not seen in any other anime to that degree, where watching it is just kind of, okay, and then afterwards, as you chew through it, it starts to come alive. It's very strange, and I don't know why. I'm just, that was my experience watching Zeta. It's an odd thing. So those are my thoughts on Zeta Gundam. As I mentioned before, I will have another video which will go digging deeper into the themes and stories and some of the events of Zeta Gundam. There's a lot to talk about regarding Zeta Gundam. It's a very interesting show. But that's what I think of Zeta Gundam. I'm impressed now. It's very strange. So if you want to talk Zeta Gundam or anime and manga in general, please stop by my website at otakunovideo.net. Look forward to talking with you about such things there. And that's it. So until next time, may you see the tears of time.